Most men think cheating begins with temptation. It doesn't. It begins long before that. In silence. In attention. In emotional hunger that was never confronted honestly. By the time betrayal becomes physical, the architecture was already collapsing underneath the surface. And that is the first illusion you need to destroy. Because this is not about all women. It never was. It is about patterns. Psychology. Human nature under pressure. Certain types of women cheat with almost mathematical predictability, not because they are evil, not because they woke up one day wanting destruction, but because their entire identity is built on unstable foundations. Validation. Escapism. Emotional impulsivity. Constant stimulation. And most men never see it coming because they are hypnotized by attraction instead of trained in observation. You keep looking at beauty. The self-aware man studies behavior. That difference changes everything. Because the truth is uncomfortable, people reveal their future in fragments long before they reveal it in actions. But most people are too lonely, too hopeful, or too distracted to notice. So they ignore the small fractures until the entire structure caves in. The first type is the woman addicted to emotional novelty. This is the woman who cannot tolerate psychological stillness. Silence feels like death to her. Stability feels boring. Peace feels emotionally empty because her nervous system has been trained to associate intensity with love. She does not want connection. She wants stimulation disguised as connection. And this is where most men destroy themselves. They think consistency wins loyalty. But with emotionally chaotic people, consistency becomes invisible. The moment you become emotionally safe, predictable, grounded, she unconsciously begins searching for another emotional spike. Not always physically at first. Sometimes emotionally. Sometimes digitally. Sometimes through attention. Sometimes through harmless conversations. You are not required to drown with someone just because you understand why they are drowning. Compassion matters. But boundaries matter too. Especially when your future is attached to someone's unresolved inner war. The fifth type is the status opportunist. This woman does not bond deeply with people. She bonds with advantage. Attention. Resources. Lifestyle. Access. Social elevation. And before you get defensive, understand this, both men and women can become opportunistic in relationships. But when attraction is built primarily on utility instead of respect, loyalty becomes transactional. The moment a better option appears, the emotional contract dissolves. This is why some men experience shocking betrayal the moment they lose status, money, influence, or momentum. The relationship was never rooted in mutual vision. It was rooted in strategic attachment. And most people cannot detect this because they confuse admiration with genuine loyalty. But admiration disappears when conditions change. Respect does not. The self-aware man stops asking, "How much does she like me?" He starts asking, "Who is she when circumstances change?" Because pressure reveals motives the way fire reveals the integrity of steel. Then comes the hardest truth of all. Sometimes cheating is not just about her. Sometimes your own desperation blinded you from reality. You ignored inconsistencies because you feared loneliness. You ignored red flags because attraction overpowered judgment. You tried to save someone who never wanted transformation. You mistook emotional intensity for compatibility. This is the part nobody wants to hear. Most people do not enter relationships consciously. They enter them emotionally starving. And starving people do not choose wisely. They choose urgently. That urgency becomes self-destruction. But disciplined human beings can restrain desire when it threatens something meaningful. The woman who constantly says things like, "I just follow my feelings. I hate being controlled." "I do whatever feels right," often sounds empowered on the surface. But beneath it is usually something much less glamorous, an inability to regulate impulses. And impulsive people become dangerous partners because emotions change faster than principles. One moment they adore you. The next moment they rationalize betrayal. And afterward they call it finding themselves. Most people never develop an internal code. They drift emotionally through life reacting instead of choosing. But relationships cannot survive without restraint. Without discipline. Without the ability to sacrifice temporary pleasure for long-term meaning. This is why self-mastery matters more than chemistry. Chemistry creates attraction. Character determines outcomes. And character is revealed in the moments where temptation collides with responsibility. The fourth type is the unresolved child hiding inside an adult body. This one requires maturity to understand. Some women cheat not from malice, but from psychological wounds they never confronted. Abandonment trauma. Neglect. Insecurity. Deep fear of being unwanted. So they sabotage intimacy before intimacy can threaten them. Think about it carefully. If someone secretly believes they are unlovable, stable love becomes terrifying because now they have something to lose. And human beings often destroy what they are afraid to lose. So they create distance. Conflict. Triangles. Infidelity. Not consciously in many cases. But psychologically. Pain becomes familiar. Chaos becomes identity. This is why emotional maturity matters more than appearance, charm, or charisma. A beautiful person with an undisciplined mind can still destroy your peace. And many men learn this too late because they confuse empathy with obligation. But understand the mechanism beneath it. A person addicted to emotional highs will eventually resent emotional stability because stability forces them to confront themselves. And most people would rather chase distraction than face emptiness. The self-aware man watches for this carefully. Does she need constant chaos? Constant drama? Constant reassurance? Does every calm moment become an excuse to manufacture conflict? Because if peace suffocates her, betrayal is only a matter of timing. The second type is more dangerous because she appears loyal in the beginning. The validation addict. This woman builds her identity through external attention. Compliments become oxygen. Desire becomes proof of existence. Every notification feels like a microscopic injection of self-worth. And modern culture quietly rewards this pathology. Look around. Entire identities are now constructed from visibility. Attention has become currency. Seduction has become social capital. So when a woman is psychologically dependent on male validation, loyalty becomes extremely fragile, not because she necessarily wants another man, but because she needs continuous confirmation that she still has power. That is why some women cheat even in good relationships. The relationship was never the center. The validation was. And if you misunderstand this, you will torture yourself trying to become better for someone whose emptiness cannot be solved by your effort. Most men respond emotionally. The disciplined man responds observationally. He asks, can this person regulate her self-worth internally? Or does she need the world staring at her to feel alive? Because if attention controls her emotions, attention will eventually control her decisions. The third type is the woman who confuses freedom with lack of accountability. Now listen carefully because modern people hate this conversation. Real freedom is not impulsiveness. Real freedom is self-governance. Anyone can follow desire. Animals do that. The man who fears being alone will tolerate what the disciplined man would walk away from immediately. And this is why self-respect is not motivational nonsense. It is psychological protection. Without it, you negotiate against your own future. Now here is the turning point. You can spend years becoming paranoid about betrayal. Checking phones. Analyzing behavior. Living in suspicion. But that path poisons you. Or you can become the kind of man who observes clearly, chooses carefully, and walks away decisively when reality reveals itself. That is power. Not controlling people. Not policing behavior. Not becoming cynical. Seeing clearly. Because the deepest lesson is this: you cannot control whether someone betrays you. But you can control whether you betray yourself by ignoring what you already know.